right, now we welcome in the one, the only, the incomparable Phil Bennett with us from his pool. One day he's going to just do it on a floaty sitting in there, I'm sure. But, Coach, you did not have to recruit the portal all that long before you retired. But when a guy is in there 3 and 4 times, would that kind of make you go, this is maybe not someone who can be committed to something?
I'm so disappointed in what we're having right now. Craig sitting there saying, Chad Morris has been involved in high school and college football for many years, and his son's been around it. And it's sure not his fault that he's going to 4 schools, but it surprises me that even the good players that had success, I mean, he would have really done himself well to stay another year at North Texas under Morse with his offense and maybe get a chance to get drafted. I don't see the reasoning for all the it's like, hey, I've been here a year, I got to go. And I'm sure Virginia's not paying that much. So I'm sort of stuck on this deal with they've got to get the portal. The time, the calendar, right, or they're going to kill these bowl games, and this game is not going to be what we all want it to be.
Coach, does it feel like the non-playoff bowl games have kind of been bordering on death now for a while? I mean, I don't know what it was like for you there towards the end playing in the postseason. I remember when it was a big deal, and we just had a guest on who's basically like, I mean, he's being truthful about it, but it's kind of like, well, it's sort of been this way for a few years now where they're not what they used to be. Do you get that sense as well? And is that the sense that you get from coaches of it's not as much an adventure and a big reward as it is just another game, so to speak, at the end of the year?
Craig, I think back in the day, they looked for the bowls really worked for marquee matchups. I look at this year. I'm excited about the Baylor LSU. I'm excited about A&M and USC. When I played at A&M, we played USC in a bowl game twice, and I think those are good matchups. But yes, I think that you've got so many bowls now, and you've got the 12-team playoff that you have the portal. I think it's human nature to get distracted on the game, and throw in coaches leaving and coaches being hired. I mean, I'm still in shock that Marshall had a great year and those kids aren't going to get to go to a bowl game. I mean, it's crazy.
What do you think about Bill Belichick?
I know Bill, and when I was at Arizona State, he and Todd Graham had the same agent, and I went up the year that they won the Super Bowl against the Falcons, and I went up for their first mini camp. Myself and Billy Napier went up there to visit with him. He let us come in, and I still remember the first team meeting from a Super Bowl champion team that they came back from like 28-3 against Atlanta Falcons. And he tore Tom Brady up in the first meeting. He said, we were behind because Tom played with his head, and I'm thinking, is this a joke? But he's an interesting guy. I got to talk in a very casual setting with him. We had dinner with him and his girlfriend at the time. He's not a big talker. It's going to be interesting. He's got Michael Lombardi, who I think orchestrated this whole thing. That's sort of going to be his valet and run this thing. It's going to be interesting. It really is. I don't think the AD was on board with it. I think this was done by a board of trustees and the chancellor. So it's going to be interesting.
How many text messages did you get from coaching pals when that news dropped, and how shocked were people with that whole story?
It's it's one of those things, Craig, that if somebody told you, you'd say, "Hey, is today the April 1st? Is today
Right.
April Fool's Day?" It's you just can't rationalize why. With I don't know how many games does he have? 17 games away from Don Shula. And I think there's some point. A friend of mine told me something. A friend of mine that's very high up in the NFL team, he told me, he said, Phil, he wasn't going to get hired in the NFL.
Right.
It had passed him by. People didn't want a guy that constantly dictated everything and had total control. They're more interested in the younger guys that the general managers say, hey, this is your team. This is your players. This is how we do it. And said that he was going to get passed by, and they think he knew it.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Yeah, that there weren't opportunities there. So if you want to keep coaching, where else do you go? You go to the college ranks, and that makes a lot of sense. That's going to be very interesting to see. In terms of other coaching moves, you cross paths with Rich Rodriguez much? I was just wondering your thoughts on him heading back to West Virginia. And there's a lot of excitement. There's also a lot of trepidation, as you might imagine, just because of how it ended the first time around. But he's a Mountaineer guy through and through. And your thoughts on him going back home?
You know, I know Rich, and he's a very, first of all, he's a very good coach. We played him I played him a couple of times. I played him the last time I played him was 2017 when I was a defensive coordinator at Arizona State. We beat him, and they had a very good team. They had that great quarterback, running back. I think they won 9 games that year, and he was fired, not for coaching, but for other things, on his wife and then supposedly a woman on the sideline. But I don't think that people today, and I know Ren Baker, the athletic director at West Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
He's a sharp guy. He's a good guy. And I think that he had to look through things. And I think when he finally came down, you know, that was 17 years ago. And I think that Rich has won everywhere he's been, with the exception of Michigan. And for some reason, for whatever reason, it just wasn't a fit there, and it didn't happen. And it got ended after 3 years. But he's a football lifer. I think he's a guy that can get them going at West Virginia. I mean, they were treading water. They weren't terrible, but yet they weren't playing for a championship. And I think it took some courage by Ren and the administration to say, you know what, we want to hear that you made a mistake, and we want to see you come back and win a Big 12 champion for us. And it's going to be interesting to see how he does. I know this. He is a hands-on coach. They will be tough. They will be coached well. And I think they could be a factor.
Scott Frost is going back to UCF. It's not the same job he left, Phil. It's very different. And things have happened in that time. They've moved conferences. He struggled at Nebraska. Do you think that was a good hire for them, given how much he seems to love that program, and so far how much they really do seem to love him?
Paul, you said it first. It's not even close to being the job that when he was there. Now, he had a lot to do with building the stable, but the guy, O'Leary's the guy that built the program. I mean, the president, George O'Leary, I mean, they built UCF. Scott came in and had a lot of good players, and then something happened at Nebraska. I don't know what it was. This job is a harder job now because your expectations in the Big 12 and the stage of college football is different than when he was there. I'm going to be interested to see what kind of staff, who he can get. Can he still get the type of kids that he got, during his tenure there? The expectations, I say this again, are going to be high for him. And there's going to be some pressure that he didn't feel the first time.
Travis Hunter wins the Heisman Trophy. It was clearly a two-man race between him and Ashton Jenny, and I think either guy would have been very deserving. But we haven't seen a lot of dual-threat players of Travis Hunter's caliber. What do you see from him as a defender when you watch him, and just your thoughts on his ability to balance both offense and defense? How would you compare that maybe to some other athletes you saw over the years?
The first thing about the Heisman is supposed to be for the best football player. Not many people, and I know the running back is outstanding, but not many people did the things that Hunter did at the level he did it at both receiver and, DB. Now, I have a friend that says without question, he said, in the NFL, he's going to be a corner because, you remember against Baylor. I remember he caused a fumble. I mean, the guy is tough, plays over 100 plays a game. And I think he'll end up being one of those all-pro cornerbacks. You can find receivers, but finding corners is hard. And I think the mentality of the way he plays is going to make him a very high draft pick.
Okay, Coach, we've got the playoff this weekend. There are some very interesting matchups. Clemson at Texas, to me, is very intriguing just on the fact that Quinn Ewers and Kate Klubnik will be playing each other again after
Texas
all that time.
QBs.
Yeah. But Texas does not let you run the ball. Like they're almost fine with you doing anything else. Like if they just don't let you run the ball, and that's where Clemson's bread and butter is. Phil Maffa, their starting running back, is banged up. What do you think Clemson has to do to get Texas on their heels? Because the only team that's done that this year really is Georgia, and I wouldn't even call what happened a couple weeks ago on their heels.
I think that Clemson came out on fire against SMU, and SMU had two coverage breakdowns that immediately was 14-0. They're going to need something like that against Texas. They're going to need to. I think that their quarterback is going to have to be a factor because I agree with you. I don't see them running the ball consistency against Texas front seven. I watched Kentucky a month ago play Texas before the A&M game, and I really thought with a little bit of break at Austin that could have really been a lot closer game. I'm not going to count Clemson out of this game by any stretch. I don't think that Ewan, since he's been hurt, has come back and played particularly well. It's going to be interesting, how it starts for them to have a chance. I think they're going to have to play well early and make it a full four-quarter game.
What do you think about Tennessee and Ohio State?
I like Ohio State for one reason. They've got a lot to prove. I think that Coach Kelly, their offensive coordinator, and they will have – I think they'll be a different team. People don't realize Michigan was good all year on defense. Texas did a good job against them, but they're good players. They had a bad day, and I just think they're more physical than Tennessee. I'm concerned about Tennessee's – I think Tennessee's quarterback has to really be hot and be a factor in the game. He's been hit or miss. They've had a nice season, but I don't think they've been dominant like they've been a couple of years ago when they beat beat Clemson or somebody in one of those Florida Bowls. So I think Ohio State will win that game.
Indiana and Notre Dame is going to be cold, Phil. It's going to be cold. They'll be ready for it. I'm sure it's going to look awesome on TV. Can Indiana score enough points on Notre Dame's defense, which is absolutely fantastic?
The first thing that you said, it's probably going to be a low-scoring game. Yeah. Now, Kurt Cignetti has sort of become a media darling about his Google me statements, and nobody anticipated us here. He'll have them ready to play because I think their quarterback, O'Rourke, is a good player. Their running back is back. It's going to be interesting, whether, the quarterback, Leonard, has gotten better and better. But you can't ever, people say, oh, Indiana doesn't have a chance. Well, what kind of chance did Northern Illinois have? So, it's going to be interesting, but I think that could be a very good game.
Does SMU know what they're getting into when they go to Happy Valley?
I think so. I was so impressed from the second quarter on of that game last 2 weeks ago at Clemson. I think they're dangerous. I think this quarterback is this is Corey Coleman's nephew, the quarterback at SMU, and he's extremely talented. They have a beat on what they can do and how they can do it. Now they're going to have to play good defense. You look at Penn State last week though against Oregon 2 weeks ago in the Big Ten championship, and I'm telling you, if they don't turn the ball over, that's going to be a 60-60 game. I mean, nobody played any defense. They had almost 600 yards offense, had more offense than Oregon had. And I just think they're explosive, but they also give up points. This might, if SMU can get in the groove early, better than they did Clemson, this could be a barn burner of a game also, I believe.
Mike Norvell has given up $4.5 million of his salary to NIL. Brian Kelly, $1 million. Mike Gundy had to give up something. I don't think he did it willingly. But how much, if I came to you and said, Phil, we got to have some of that. We got to have some of that check of yours to pay for these players. What number are you getting pushed back at?
I'm going to tell you what I told a dear friend of mine that's a head coach right now. Dead men walking, all of them. They better save that money.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Sometimes when you're in the moment, the lights get in your eyes, you don't see things. Listen, after the hissy fit that Norvell threw last year about not being in the playoff, Georgia smacking them, and the year they had, missing in the portal on quarterback, maybe he thinks that's going to – their fans right now are pissed off, and rightfully so. They were not prepared to win this year.
Yeah, no, that absolutely not. Phil Bennett, the one, the only.
All right, guys. Where's our boy? Hey, where's our boy today? Where's Smokey?
He had to go to a funeral in East Texas, so that's where he was. So, yeah, that's where he was.
Good deal.
All
Listen,
right.
We'll see y'all next week.
All right, talk to you soon, Phil.